Have there been any arrests of Mr. Dewitte lately involving funeral escorts?
No, there has not.
Have you still been receiving complaints of this escort service operating the way it is?
Yes, we have. We were given very clear and direct instructions to have no involvement with Mr. Dewitte unless he was committing a capital felony, and then we would take action.
That's very weird. Why wasn't his bond revoked until Baines revoked it on the DV? There's been an attempt to unwind that and turned it into a foot slammed in a door. And then there was the failure to register arrest. I think counsel completely misinterprets and misreads this court. So
this particular witness and some bias that exists between the client. That's one. The domestic violence case that was then recategorized as a battery that was then ultimately null pros, which is why his bonds were, in this case, revoked.
Initially,
The issue on it.
Hello folks, and welcome back to True Crime Phenomenon. This is Josh coming back to you with another video. Today's video is on Jeremy Dewitte's bond hearing, part 3. And I went ahead and put some clips there in the beginning. That way you can get a feel for what you're going to hear in the rest of this recording. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments below. Love to know what's on your mind. Got lots more to come, but we're going to finish out this bond hearing first before we get moving on to the internal affairs investigation stuff. So, I hope you like the content. Give me a thumbs up if you do, and I will see you on the other side.
File 0048 that says Seminole County, that's the last one we just watched, that would be admitted. These full clips are admitted, Your Honor. But
well, have you given them to Madam Clerk?
Well, they're on this. This is the disc.
So that's a no?
Yeah, I give her for identification.
Okay.
But
you're moving those into evidence now.
But just these files and the others that are the excerpted ones are not admitted.
Okay. Are the ones that you played and the ones you want in evidence on the disc in Madam Clerk's hand?
Well, I just need to read the file names that we played for the record.
But I can't admit anything I can't admit the entire disc because it has things on it for which the court sustained an objection. So,
if I may just make a separate thumb drive or disc with those three, if I just have a little time to do that.
Okay. Well, I expect we're going to be back at 1:30, so sure.
Okay. And for now, I'll just get back to the
well, that's just for ID, so yeah, that's fine.
Could you still state on the record what those numbers are? So I can
yes. Well, I'll when I introduce the one that we introduced for evidence, I'll just name those files.
Could I just ask a question before we go further? The defendant, Mr. Dewitte, had a lewd and lascivious molestation or battery in his past.
Lascivious.
Okay, maybe it doesn't make a difference, but there's no VOP pending, right?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
I do have this document so perfect.
That's okay. I just wondered. I wondered if there was a VOP somewhere.
No.
Okay.
Now, Corporal Ramsey, those clips, the year, what are the time frames, the years that those occurred in?
Those particular clips, I believe, are between 2018 and 2019.
So this is 3 or 4 years after you've had a talk with him about that kind of funeral escort.
Correct.
Did those videos demonstrate how the escorts had escalated in terms of their aggressiveness?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you testified earlier you still received complaints from people about these escorts
Correct.
as recently as this year?
Correct. As recently as in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
And let me clarify, in the last 2 weeks, I received a call from our individual who works in our traffic office stating that people were calling in complaining about them and what should she do. I told her at this point just document them.
And so at this point, these escorts continue despite what you had relayed to Mr. Dewitte. Does that go into what your concerns were as far as the dangerousness of him continuing to do this?
That's just part of it, but yes. Some of his comments that he has made as well.
Can you speak generally about, or specifically about, let me just come off the phone, sorry. So the conduct of the escorts is something you would consider to be dangerous to the public. What other dangers do you believe that he poses to the public, and why?
Well, one, we have a bulletin reference to Mr. Dewitte making statements that he was going to come into.
That's the hearsay.
It's the same.
It's a bond hearing, Your Honor. It's admissible.
Oh, sorry. You want to be heard on that?
Yes, Your Honor. This is the officer testifying about bulletin.
Right, but Mr. Moore is reminding the court that hearsay is admissible in bond hearings.
If it was direct hearsay, Your Honor, I understand, but this is hearsay upon hearsay. It's not. It's a compoundment of that hearsay.
Okay, the court vacates its prior ruling and will overrule the objection. Go ahead.
You may continue.
All right, so I believe it is October 16th of 2019. I interviewed Jennifer, I believe it's Barton.
Jennifer Burton.
Barton.
And let me just stop. Was she here today testifying?
I believe I saw her outside, yes.
Okay. And continue.
All right, so during that interview that she requested with us, we were not seeking her out. She had told me in that interview that Jeremy Dewitte was threatening to commit suicide by cop by coming into the sheriff's office and shooting it up until he was shot. And after that, I met with my captain, who we then met with our intel people, who, based on the information that we were receiving then, a second bulletin was put out. There was a first one put out by the city of Orlando, through the FBI. But the second one with the Orange County Sheriff's Office was put out as a result of my contact with Jennifer. We've also had other individuals who are witnesses in this case contact us to state that Mr. Dewitte has shown interest in purchasing an unregistered vehicle so he could run Sergeant Vidler or myself over on a traffic stop and not be caught.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
We're going to have to, I have a meeting at noon that I have to get ready for briefly. So we're going to adjourn until 1:30, and we'll just wait for you, Mr. Ladan, until you get here.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, very good.
I
What is
can't
it?
find coverage for the 1:30, but I don't know.
Okay, so we are now returning back to court after the recess, and Amir Ladan is going to cross-examine Corporal Ramsey, and he's going to step right in it and stick his foot in his mouth because he's going to kind of open the door to these kind of, I don't want to say corruption allegations, but some consider them corruption allegations made by Corporal Ramsey and Sergeant Vidler that they were told to stand down. And he actually gets more in depth into it. And honestly, I think it's probably the worst thing he could have brought up because it kind of raises the antennas of this judge, and she starts listening much more closely. I mean, she's already disturbed from those recordings, but it's going to get a little bit hairier here, so pay close attention. Please like, share, comment, most importantly, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Talk to you all soon.
Have there been any arrests of Mr. Dewitte lately involving funeral escorts?
No, there has not.
Have you still been receiving complaints of this escort service operating the way it is?
Yes, we have. We were given very clear and direct instructions to have no involvement with Mr. Dewitte unless he was committing a capital felony, and then we would take action.
So you've been told by superior officers that you are not allowed to arrest Jeremy Dewitte unless he's committing a capital offense?
Yes, sir.
You just testified a moment ago before I began cross-examining you that you've been directed to stand down, if you will. That's not the first time that you've been directed to stand down, is it?
Me individually, or me as in the sheriff's office?
You personally in Mr. DeWitte's case.
Personally?
Right.
And are you referring to 2015?
Yes, sir.
Okay, in 2015, the entire motor unit was told also at the same time.
One more time, the entire
Motor unit,
motor unit. Okay.
the entire motor unit, we were all instructed to leave him alone. Mr. DeWitte.
Okay. Do you know who posts those to the internet for Metro State?
Well, I guess you can say I'm assuming that Mr. DeWitte did, because he's the one stating that, living the life of, and you asked me to post this, so I'm posting it. So yeah, he's made that comment multiple times.
Okay.
You wanted to see what it's like for me to go through Starbucks. So here it is. So it would pretty much make sense that it was him posting it.
Okay.
He might have somebody who physically uploads it.
Right.
That I can't say. I don't know.
So that nothing that you've done during the course of the investigation would lead you to have personal knowledge of who's actually posting to the website, correct?
I have not investigated that. That's what you're referring to.
Sure. And you continue to see posts on that website even while he's sitting in here in jail, do you not?
A few have been sent to me, but I try not to watch them because they're a little disturbing.
Okay. So there are posts being made to the website that you're attributing to Mr. Witt while he's in jail that somebody's posting.
Well, the ones I think that you're referring to that I've seen have been like jail phone calls where he's on one side of the phone and Jennifer's on the other, and they're having a conversation. Is that what you're talking about?
Among them, yes.
Yeah, and Jennifer's the one who's posting those on behalf of Mr. DeWitte. And I've heard the conversation that
The defendant's motion for a bond, and I'll hear your argument.
Funeral escorts that have zero problems whatsoever, that have zero incidents of any kind. We have a track record of years and years of providing these funeral escorts without issue. Mr. DeWitte is not.
So that wasn't him on the video screaming at those people and using profanity repeatedly and directing people off the road? That wasn't him?
That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry, because that's not a legal analysis. Because he has had so many days of doing such wonderful legal activity that the illegal activity he committed on a particular date shouldn't count.
That's not what I mean to imply.
Okay, well, that's what I got out of that.
Well, let me do a better job.
Okay. Good.
The fact that there are incidents that are before the court that Mr. DeWitte is uncontested. And I've seen the videos and I'm aware of the videos. However, this is a business that provides a service and has, at one point, quite a few funeral homes and organizations that utilize them for these escorts without incident. So my point is not that in some way negates what the court saw, but that Mr. DeWitte is fully capable of exercising good judgment and operating in an appropriate way.
Good, because I really do not want to see weeping former customers talking about what a grand and helpful person he was when their loved one passed.
And that's never happened.
Good.
So the issue here, Your Honor, is I'm sure the court could care less about my financial involvement with the DeWitte.
That's correct.
That he doesn't have the financial wherewithal to post large funds.
Understood.
And so we would ask the court to reimpose the bond originally said. If the RORs are not sufficient for the court to feel there's some kind of safeguard to be released on pretrial release, if GPS monitor is something that the court wishes to impose, Mr. Dewitte indicated that he is more than willing to comply with that.
Did you mention the testimony about threats to law enforcement officers, threats of violence to law enforcement?
No, I asked, there was a bulletin put out claiming that my client was going to go in and commit suicide by cop, and so I had asked
if he ever actually heard that.
Right, and the only source of that information was a conversation somebody had in Department of Defense Perkins. We've got countless audio and video recordings, and not once did my client ever utter those.
So that witness's testimony was just not credible. That's what you're asking the court to find, insofar as that's concerned.
Absolutely. I mean, and not to mention,
that's fine. That's a legitimate position to
not to
take.
mention my client's here 2 years after this supposed bulletin went out, has been confronted by law enforcement officers in the last 2 years, God knows how many times, and has not lifted a hand, let alone ever feigned some, shootout at the OK Corral. So that's just nonsensical. There's no evidence. He is not a threat to law enforcement. So we'd be asking for this bond to be reinstated.
Understood. Mr. Moore?
Yes, Your Honor, this really is kind of the first time a court has been able to look at all of these cases. When Mr. Dewitte is rearrested, there, what
Not
makes it
rearrested, arrested.
correct, and
he hasn't been rearrested until at all on the charges for which he's now seeking bond. He was only arrested once. He was ROR'd. Then he was arrested on a domestic violence charge. And at IA's, his bond was revoked. So it wasn't an arrest.
I wish it was that simple. there really is a long history to this, because it dates back to that first Windermere case. That happened on September 7th of 2019.
So you're saying he was arrested on, let's say, that charge before this court signed capias on him?
No, that was the first arrest on September 7th of 2019.
I can't wait to hear how he's been rearrested. Not to split hairs, but arrested on different charges, yes. Okay, that's not a rearrest. That's another arrest.
Correct. The DV case that Your Honor is faced with today that happened on April 7th, and now there's a new warrant which Your Honor has, which is the failure to report case from Osceola County. That was served on him a couple weeks ago. Those are the fifth and sixth new cases that happened from criminality that would have occurred after the initial. So my point being, he has come before courts on several cases with new criminal charges, not things that preceded. He has also come before the court with several cases that preceded that original arrest, and that's what really constitutes the 12 total cases between Orange and Osceola County.
Why wasn't his bond revoked until Baines revoked it on the DV? There's been an attempt to unwind that and turned it into a foot slammed in a door. And then there was the failure to register arrest. I think counsel completely misinterprets and misreads this court. So.
Well, Your Honor, I am asking you to keep him no bond because of the new arrest, of course. That's first and foremost. Mm-hmm. If Your Honor was thinking of releasing him, I was presenting to the court evidence that I believe his behavior and conduct is dangerous in the community. There has now been evidence of other types of dangerous threats in terms of potentially causing harm or making threats to witnesses. And based on those things, I do think it's still appropriate to hold him no bond until we can get these cases heard and resolved.
Counsel, the failure to register case is going to be tried next week, and it may be tried by this court.
It's on the docket next week, Your Honor.
Right. And is the state prepared to go forward and prove that case?
We can, Your Honor, yes.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Because there are 4 cases that have been assigned to this court, so we're not quite sure yet which one will go.
Yes.
Is there a minimum mandatory on that charge? I believe there is, isn't there?
On the
Failure to register?
No, the failure to register,
So what is this charge? Failure
the failure to register as a sex offender. So he has one initial count and then 2 more registrations where he still omitted to register a vehicle that belonged to his wife. So
no minimum mandatory.
not on a failure to register. No, but he does. I think I don't have the score sheet in front of me, but there's a minimum guideline sentence, and then we did also file a habitual felony offender notice in that case, as well as all of his others.
Okay. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Counsel?
Your Honor, the crux of our argument is this. The courts have heard, every time Mr. Dewitte's been arrested, arguments from the state that his bond should be revoked, and they have declined to do so for whatever their individual reasons and rationales were. Of the arrests that have happened subsequently, one was what we believe to be an unlawful arrest in March that the Sheriff's Office legal department unarrested my client the very next day prior to the initial appearance.
And what case was that?
The one involving this witness from March 23rd of this year.
Which was what charge?
The carrying concealed weapons.
Oh, right. The court's not considering.
And Your Honor, I'm sorry to butt in, but I did not include that in my list.
The court's
of
not considering
cases.
that. Okay.
I know you're not considering it from that perspective, but I do think it's relevant as it relates to this particular witness and some bias that exists between the client. That's one. The domestic violence case that was then recategorized as a battery that was then ultimately null pros, which is why his bonds were, in this case, revoked.
Initially,
Initially. And I think there was actually another one where a warrant was sought and then ultimately quashed by the state attorney's office involving the allegation where Ms. Burton had testified that she wanted to file a criminal complaint against an assailant at the office from last year, and they opted to pursue my client for that charge. So Mr. Dewitte is clearly capable of exercising the judgment he needs to stay out.
What about the failure to register charge?
We're litigating that, Judge. I mean, I don't understand the new one that we just got a copy of.
Well, the one that's, I don't know. Are there there's more than one?
There's a brand new one that the warrant that was just served a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Your Honor, in Osceola County.
Okay.
Is alleging a phone number that they're saying wasn't properly registered. That's the newest of the charges. So my understanding of the case that's been set for trial next week is a case involving my client's wife's vehicle, where the vehicle was known by law enforcement and it was registered, but I guess the tag was changed at some point or renewed by the DMV, and it may be that specific tag was not properly registered. It's a pretty de minimis violation. It's not the kind of case in a normal circumstance that Mr. Dewitte was Joe Schmo and now Mr. Dewitte. I suspect that we would have a reasonable plea offer and the case would be resolved. But because Mr. Dewitte is Mr. Dewitte, that's a tougher nut to crack, so to speak, Your Honor. So that it's not a case I would normally want to try, nor would it necessarily need a trial. So that's the predicament we're in on that case. I don't know if Your Honor wants to address that case at this time or not, but counsel and I had been talking about it, and I had indicated there might be some value in continuing that case so he and I might have a more thorough conversation about if there's a path to resolution in these cases. We have had a prior plea offer tendered by a prior prosecutor that was rejected, but there may be an opportunity for us to revisit this case.
File your motion.
Yes, Your Honor.
It's the legal law, folks. The legal law. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Put your notifications below. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those down below, and I'll catch you on the flip side.